So,
Andrew, I think is next.
Andrew in Sheffield, UK. And I know that I pronounce everything in the UK wrong. So,
Hi, guys.
How are you?
You pronounced that okay.
Okay.
Really, it's a call from. I phoned a few weeks ago and talked to Don and Jeff, but I was pretty late on the show and only managed to talk to them kind of after the show had finished. And it was basically about Islam and the kind of rise in Islam kind of in this country and probably in America as well. Maybe I'm not too sure what the situation's like over there.
I wouldn't say.
The question is, as Islam is pretty much a fundamentalist religion, and in the UK we don't have a fundamentalist Christianity to the same extent that you seem to do over there. It's really just to get some advice from you guys onto how I could best deal with that kind of, shall we say, religious argument when I'm debating as an atheist.
Oh, you actually get chances to talk to fundamentalist Muslims a lot. Huh?
From my point of view,
and you still have a head,
Muslims are pretty fundamentalist, and so yeah. I mean, I work in education, so I come across quite a few members of staff who are actually, quite devout Muslims, really.
See, it sounds to me like a different situation there than here, because here, I mean, I think most Muslims in the United States find themselves having to stay pretty low-key.
Well, it's less than 1% of the population here.
Yeah, it's a very small percent of the population, and in general, it seems like the Muslims I come into, I mean, first of all, we hardly get anyone ever calling the show as a Muslim. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, because I've talked to some fairly extreme Muslim creationist types who present the same type of arguments as the fundamentalist Christian types.
And I will tell you that I would probably suggest, you're encountering Muslim fundamentalists because they're the ones who are out there, they're wanting to talk, right?
Yeah.
I think probably realistically.
I may have been a little bit wrong in kind of labeling them all together as all fundamentalists. Obviously, because that includes quite a range. I mean, the ones that I talk to do accept evolution, and really they are on the way to, shall we say, secularism to a certain extent, but not to the same level that. You kind of indigenous Christian population in this country is, which is, as you probably know, Christianity in this country is because there isn't this separation of church and state. The Christian religion is I think Jeff was spot on when I talked to him. The Christian religion in this country is very lazy, shall we say, and so therefore you kind of haven't got a target to aim at, if you see what I mean. If you're trying to with the exception of maybe Jehovah's Witnesses, there's nobody really out there to kind of deal with on a fundamental basis.
Well, you have a different situation also over there in the UK than we have here, which is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that there are always blasphemy laws to be wary of. And I don't know to what...
Not in the UK, in Ireland.
Ireland, right.
I'm pretty certain in thinking that has just been overturned, or it hasn't gone through or something.
Oh, well, that's good news.
What we have in this country is, we have, again, you may have it in America, I'm not too sure, but we have something called hate speech. However, it's not clearly defined. And simply somebody being very, 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 very aggressive in a, shall we say, an anti-religious way, dare I mention Matt, might be a good example over here, could be in a little bit of trouble if you were to do a similar program over here. I don't know how long that program would last, or even if it would be allowed.
Right.
And it's really quite serious in that respect in this country at the moment.
But at the same time, I think that there has been this sort of pushback from, say, the skeptical, secular, people who are activists in skepticism and unbelief, because we recently had the situation with Simon Singh.
I don't want to kind of say that it's all going one way.
Right, but you have the situation with like Simon Singh recently was sued by a group of homeopaths under he suffered a libel suit. And and which the homeopaths actually won simply because Simon Singh said this homeopathy doesn't work, right? I mean, it's bogus, and there's studies showing it. And the homeopaths and so the whole thing you have to understand about pseudoscience, religion, what have you, is it's all about we don't have the facts on our side, so the way to deal with opposition is to simply shut it down. And there are laws over there that in the UK that I do think sort of make it easy for that kind of shutting down of dissent of certain beliefs easier. And what recently happened was that the suit against Simon Singh, he finally got, that was thrown out finally, or overturned or reversed or what have you. And and that was a really terrific victory over there and so now there's a big push in the UK for libel reform.
I think the problem with that is that it should have been a lot clearer than what it actually was, and it took an immense amount of money and of different lawyers all working behind the scenes or whatever to try and get that through in what was really or shouldn't have been a very complicated case. And I think that's the huge problem, that in this country there seems to be a lot of spin put on everything, whether it's religious or political or spin regarding law or whatever. And in America, from watching your program and many other programs, you seem to say it like it is a whole lot more than we do over here.
Yeah, that's kind of the trade-off.
To you, actually.
It's kind of the trade-off is that it's kind of a breeding ground for BS. I mean, it's there's this enormous emphasis on freedom of speech and freedom to say any nonsense that you want, which I love. I think it's great. But that actually makes it easier for a million different splinter religions to form and all be at odds with each other. And you could say that's actually a good thing because they all keep each other in check.
And what we have here in the States, we have hate crimes legislation. But we don't have hate speech legislation because that runs up against our First Amendment. But what you hear every time, hate speech legislation, every time it is brought, up to, before, whenever anything like that is attempted to get through here, the groups always going up against it are going to be the Christian fundamentalists, the right-wing conservative politicians, because they will equate the hate speech with hate crimes. They'll say, oh, well, they want to, well, it's a precious part of our beliefs that homosexuality is a sin. And so if this law comes through, then you're going to censor us from the pulpit. It's like, well, no. You can continue to be raving, idiotic homophobes from the pulpit, right? You just can't engage in hate crimes, right? You can't incite people to go out and beat up the gays, right? That's a different thing.
Right.
So it's the actions that are different from speech. And what you seem to be saying is that there's that distinction isn't so clear cut.
And it's important to me that these...
It boils down to if somebody feels, or if a large enough group of people feel that they have been offended in some way, it gets back to this point of being offended, and they kick up quite a bit of a fuss, then usually the law comes down on their side.
Okay, well, it sounds like what...
That seems to be the way that it's gone over here over the past few years.
Well, then I think that UK atheists and skeptics need to play that game, then. If it's working for them, it should work for you.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
You should say, we are offended at these intrusions of religious indoctrination into the educational system. We are offended by, the way in which... we are not allowed to speak our minds, and that we have to be confronted with this threat of, they're blowing up the subways. Good Lord, where will it end? Right? Go ahead and play that.
As long as you're very careful in what you say.